Phil Waite, Labour Party candidate for the constituency of Harlow. Phil, firstly, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, etc., and what brought you to today.
Yeah, so well, I've lived in Harlow for over 30 years. So I moved to Harlow when I was 18, and I've lived and worked in Harlow since then. Started off working in the theatre, so I used to work at the Playhouse, which I started obviously when I was 18. I worked there and became the stage manager at the Playhouse, and I was the stage manager up until it closed in 1996, I think it was. And following that, I moved to work for Tesco's, and I spent 19 years working for Tesco's, including working in the shops, and then eventually working in the warehouse, both as a warehouseman and then eventually as an HGV driver. Unfortunately, 3 and a bit years ago, 4 years ago, the distribution centre in Harlow, Tesco's, closed, as I'm sure people will be aware in the town, and I was made redundant, and I then went to work for the trade union. Basically, during my 30-year career, I've always been a trade unionist. I was a trade unionist at the Playhouse, and also I was a trade union rep for Tesco's. Got involved in national pay bargaining, as well as some international stuff with Tesco's European Works Council.
So why has being a trade unionist been important to you?
So for me, it's always been about helping people. So I've always been one that wants to get the best for people, which is why I got involved as a trade unionist. And ultimately, that's what led to getting me involved in politics. So I got to a point in my trade union career where I came to realise that the thing that was stopping me from getting fairness and justice was the legal system. And clearly there's only one way to fix the legal system, and that is through politics. So I decided to get involved in the party about 10 years ago, and then got elected as a Harlow councillor around 5 years ago, after running a number of campaigns with the party locally. And
what have you enjoyed about being a Harlow district councillor?
For me, it's casework. So similar to what I do at work. So it's the individual casework. It's people coming to you with their issues and trying to help fix them. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis at work nowadays, because nowadays I'm a full-time trade union official for Usdall. I've been doing that for just over 3 years now, obviously, since I stopped working for Tesco's. And that's what gets me going. Yeah.
What's your style? Because people can see you in council meetings because we've been filming them for 4 years. But to us, you've always come across as quite a conciliatory, diplomatic character. Would you say that's your style?
Absolutely. Well, as a negotiator, it is my job to be that sort of middle ground between an employer and employee. So to try and get the right outcome for everybody is always the best solution. Yes.
And so it takes us to approaching 2017. So when did you first get the inkling that you might want to stand for Parliament?
Well, I did look at standing as an MEP about 3 or 4 years ago now. To be honest, at the time, due to mainly because of all the employment rights that come out of Europe, I was inclined to head down that route. Clearly that option is no longer there as we are coming out of Europe. So for me it was about where next, and obviously when the general election, which nobody expected, was called, I had to do a little bit of thinking and decide whether I wanted to be an MP, and after discussion with my family and my wife, I decided I'd throw my hat in the ring for Harlow. But it wasn't a career choice 6 weeks ago, because obviously I knew nothing about it at the time.
Which brings us to now. So give us some of the key issues that you're standing on.
So for me, there's 5 key points in Harlow that we're standing on. So it's one, the NHS and social care. Clearly they're both in crisis at the moment, and they need fixing. So we know that PH has failed all its targets around 16 weeks for treatment, 4 hours in A&E. My father's not been well recently, and I've spent quite a lot of time, unfortunately, both in Harlow Hospital and in hospitals in North London. And despite the great job that the staff do, it concerns me that they're under-resourced. So that's probably top of the list. Second, in housing, well, council housing, or housing, full stop, to be honest. So there is a desperate need within Harlow to deal with a housing crisis. There are over 4,000 people waiting for houses in Harlow, and those are just the people on the list, and we know that there's more than that. So, if you've got children, which I have, and you want them to leave home at some point in the near future, clearly we need to do a better job building houses, which is why I'm really glad that in our manifesto we're committed to build 1 million homes in the next 5 years, and for them to be social housing. So you'll know obviously that Harlow Council has built the first council houses in a generation, and they opened last year, and we'll look to work on improving that.
You mentioned that when I've been to Pheasants Cross several times with regard to the social housing there near Markham, and I know when Jeremy Corbyn came, I still felt, as a Harlow boy, aware of all the social housing I was born and brought up with. I thought, is this it? I thought, I just want there's a few houses. Is this it? Would you, in your mind, see a lot more in Harlow if you could? Absolutely.
So the plan for the council was always for that to be a pilot, because we didn't have the skills within the council to build council housing. So they were a pilot to check out and make sure we could get the skills in to do it, prior to then expanding what we were going to do. Unfortunately, due to the change in government policy, that was kind of scuppered, and we're now having to look at alternatives for how the council's doing. But should Labour be elected, I think there would be a clear policy decision to go back to building substantial numbers in the local plan.
Labour announced today that they were going to take health issues very seriously, and one of their focuses would be obesity in children. Mm-hmm. And they were saying that they were going to put a move forward to stop there being any fast food and snack adverts on television before 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Now, when you're fighting the election, I imagine that the people in Harlow are much more concerned about their local hospital being in special measures than they are about an advert for Pringles at 7:30 in the evening. How are you going to make sure that the national policies, which is what the news is going to be full about, is going to be redirected so that the people in Harlow are going to vote for you?
So I think so clearly one of the things that we've been looking at is how we get our messages out to the people of Harlow. So we've got a team working specifically on social media at the moment, specifically to target the people in Harlow and make sure they get the message. We're also on the doorstep at least 2 or 3 times a day at the moment, and we'll be doing regular campaigning and talking to the media, people like yourselves, getting stuff into the papers, so that absolutely in the 4 and a bit weeks that are left till the election, the message will get through to the people of Harlow.
And what are you going to say to them?
Well, so as far as the hospital is concerned, as far as the NHS, that the council have already been looking at and will look to make sure that as part of the local plan process, Harlow delivers a brand new hospital. So that's the first thing. Clearly, if Labour get back into power, we will tackle the crisis in the NHS. So now it's not just about stopping the issues around waiting times, but also about making sure it's properly resourced and properly staffed. So we know there's a number of nurses that are struggling to stay working for the NHS, and we'll make sure that's properly resourced, and there's training and bursaries and all the things which will make sure that we get proper nursing within the industry. But it's not just about the NHS and the hospital. The second thing we need to deal with clearly is social care. Social care is an absolute crisis. We've seen issues with underfunding there, and that's got to be tackled. And I think that's more of a long-term project to fix the whole social care issue. But I think it's something that successive governments have failed with, but we're committed to fixing.
Where do you stand? I don't know if this is relevant to Harlow. It might be with other future senior schools that may or may come here, etc. But where do you stand with grammar schools?
So my view on selection, whether it's grammar schools or otherwise, is I really don't think it's a good idea. So I think that the best way to get outcomes for the whole population is to have a comprehensive education system where funding is spread equally. I think once you go down the selective route, you end up focusing your resources on a small part of the population, which ultimately doesn't help the economy long run, as well as being bad for those children that aren't part of that selective group. We also know that under the current formula for funding, that by 2020 Harlow's likely to lose around £3 million to its schools, and clearly that would have a disastrous effect on the education of the children in Harlow.
The Conservatives simply say that all schools are getting more money than ever, but you don't buy that.
Well, they're not, because if you look at the funding formula, actually they're investing more money into the schools in wealthier areas, but in deprived areas like some of the wards in Harlow, those schools are going to get substantially less. So it's not about being fairer, because actually, that there is more need to invest in these schools in Harlow. So no.
Why do you think Robert Halfon won in 2010? He's now extended his majority to 8,000 last time. That's going to be hard to dislodge, isn't it?
It is, but I think it's about getting the message out there. It's about looking at the issues that matter to people, and it's about campaigning on issues. So, I mean, the Tories seem to be hung up on a one-issue campaign. There are more things to talk about than the so-called deal she's going to negotiate on Brexit. I don't believe that for a second that her negotiation stance is likely to deliver results. I mean, as you know, I'm a negotiator, and if I went into negotiation with any of the companies I deal with and dealt with them in the way she's dealing with Europe, I can guarantee a bad outcome.
Thursday must have been a blow to you to lose all those Essex County councillors here in Harlow.
It was, but it was more of a blow for the individuals who'd worked really hard for those 4 years, and also a blow for the people of Harlow. I think allowing the Tories more scope to introduce the kind of austerity measures running going to be bad for the bit of Harlow is bad in the long term. But we don't have time to dwell on that. We do have an election to win, and we are working to deliver the message to people of Harlow that actually Labour is the party that can deliver for them. We obviously also had the issue that unfortunately UKIP didn't manage to submit any candidates, and any votes they may have taken, I think, clearly went to the Tories.
I was wondering about this, and this might be a bit of a long form question. I remember when you had the 5 UKIP councillors, and then you had the by-election about 6 months later with Mark Hall, and it looked then as if the UKIP vote went back. No, it didn't look as if UKIP voters actually went to a party. They just collapsed by 50%, but now it looks like UKIP voters are going, and are going to Conservatives. That must be a worry.
So it is a worry, but I think it's based on different parts of the
What's changed in 2015, in 2 years?
So I think clearly Theresa May's been pushing this one stop strategy about, it's all about her delivering Brexit. Well, actually, this is a general election about more than just delivering Brexit. So the Labour Party are committed to delivering Brexit. But do you want a Brexit that's good for the bankers and the Tory funders, or do you want a Brexit that's good for the people of the UK? My argument is absolutely we need Brexit, but we need Brexit that delivers for the people of the UK, and specifically in Harlow for the people of Harlow. I don't believe for a second that Theresa May will deliver for the people of Harlow. She'll deliver for her rich friends, as she has done, and as the Tory party has done consistently for the last 7 years.
Can I ask you a question there? You say that it has to be for the people of the UK, and specifically, obviously, in your case, for the people of Harlow. So what actually, to the voters, are you offering the people in Harlow that will be greatly affected by the Brexit? Particularly perhaps the Polish segment of things. What's going to make them feel better and feel safer in your hands?
Well, so for the people who potentially switched to Brexit in Harlow, so I think for me the issue for them was not about any kind of xenophobia or any kind of dislike of immigration. So although it was all couched in immigration, for me it was about undercutting of wages. So I know from having worked in a building where there was quite a lot of us, there was around 1,000 people worked just down the road in the Tesco distribution centre, where we found that there was undercutting of wages, which led to eventually that site closing and moving to another part of the country. And I think the things that have been outlined in our manifesto around making sure that doesn't happen again, and ensuring rights for workers are the things which will resonate with the people of Harlow. So it's about making sure your job's safe, that you get a well-paid job, that you can afford to pay your bills, and those I think are the important stories to get out there.
And what about the people that are living here from Europe? What are you going to do to protect them?
Well, I'd give them rights to stay. I mean, I think the whole sort of idea of trading between Europe that's been going on, and trying to argue that there should be some kind of trade-off between one set of people and another side of people is nothing short of outrageous and a very bad negotiating strategy.
And do you think that the Liberal Democrats are a threat to any success that you might have in taking the votes from the Conservatives?
I think that's something you need to ask the Liberal Democrats, but they've not been much of a force in Harlow for quite a while. I think that they're still untrusted after 2010, and I don't see much chance of that changing anytime soon.
Even with the Europe issues?
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely.
A couple of more issues before we close. Crime.
Yeah.
Some people think crime in Harlow now, policing in Harlow is a couple of cops on Twitter telling people what they're doing. Are you genuinely concerned about the police numbers in Harlow? And if so, what would you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, both myself and already the council have been looking at how crime can be fixed. So, and we've been running quite a lot of work on that this week. So, obviously, there's been a major decrease in police numbers since 2010. So, there've been 20,000 police stripped out since then. Labour are committed to putting in another 10,000 police if we're re-elected. And also, we want to look at PCSOs as well. So PCSOs across the town have basically been stripped out. I mean, I know that I used to go to a local neighbourhood NAP meeting or neighbourhood action panel. All those have stopped. So we want to see a return to community policing, to dealing with local issues, to dealing with antisocial behaviour. And that's something which, along with the council, I'd work keenly on to make sure that was delivered.
When I speak to Robert Halford about this, and I've spoken to him before, and I'll speak to him again about it, he seems to think the police have got lots of money, it's just tied up in buildings. If they release that, bingo, they can employ lots of police officers. Do you buy that?
No, and the police don't buy that either. So we've had a discussion with a retired policeman who absolutely says they need more investment. It's not about them releasing capital or whatever, it's about employing people. You can't get a proper police service if you don't fund it. You won't get community policing if you don't have PCSOs. And the excuses coming from the Tories are nothing but excuses and don't hold up to what we see out in the streets.
So now it's May the 8th.
Month to go.
Month to go.
Yes.
So what's the plan between now and June the 8th?
Well, we'll be working hard. So we already have been out there since the election on Thursday, talking to people. We'll be in town centre every weekend between now and the election, and we'll be out on the doors talking to people and trying to get to as many events as possible. I'm hoping that there'll be some form of hustings event, which I'd like to happen, or even a couple where hopefully Robert will debate issues with any of the other candidates that get put forward, and get the people of Harlow to understand the issues and hopefully vote Labour.
What will you gauge as success and what will you gauge as failure, by the way?
I'll gauge a success becoming the next MP of Harlow, and I've not thought about failure, to be honest.